Hi everyone, it's me Oля here, and it's a wonderful day to learn some Ukrainian. If you agree with that statement, keep watching. Today I want to talk to you about dative case, the next case in our list of Ukrainian cases, and it has nothing to do with dating if anybody got too excited, but it rather has to do with giving, and I am going to try and explain you why right now. I always want you to make this relation in your head between the name of the case and the way it functions. Because we don't choose the name for the case just because we like it. The name of the case always contains the clue about the case itself. So dative case, it translates into Ukrainian as Давальний відмінок. Давальний відмінок. Давальний відмінок or dative case. Давальний. The word давальний comes from the verb давати, давати, давати. It means to give. Now, if we take a look at the verb to give in English, because the same thing will happen in Ukrainian. For example, let's take such a phrase, to give a pen to a boy. To give a pen to a boy. To give what? A pen, it's direct object. But to give a pen, to whom? To a boy. A boy in this case is indirect object. And not only the verb to give work this way, there are much more verbs in English and in Ukrainian that take direct and indirect object. So the noun in indirect object is always in dative case. Therefore, the questions for the dative case would be to whom, right? To give a pen to whom? To a boy. To whom or to what? Кому, чому? To whom? Кому, to what, чому? Now let's think of more verbs that in English and in Ukrainian might take indirect objects. For example, to tell something. Розповісти, розповісти or розказати takes indirect object. Розповісти студентам, to tell to students, for example. To show, показати, показати, показати to someone. To allow, дозволити, дозволити, дозволити. Again, to someone. To explain, пояснити, пояснити, пояснити. To explain something, but indirect object to someone. To say something to someone. Сказати, сказати, сказати. So these are pretty much all the verbs that take the indirect object that came to my mind at the moment. Now, if you can think of other verbs that work like that, please write them in comments down below so we can make this class more interactive. So we have figured out that the biggest case of using dative case in Ukrainian is for nouns as indirect objects after such verbs as to give, to tell, to explain, to allow, to say, and so on. Also, we use dative case when we talk about somebody's or something's age. For example, let's take me. My name's Ola. So, but if we want to say Ola is 27, we would say Олі 27. Олі 27. Степан is 35. Степанові 35. For example, there is this old building, and let's say будівлі 100 років. The building is 100 years old. Будівлі 100 років. Now we know that whenever we are changing the case of a noun, we might expect two kinds of changes. First of all, the change in the verb itself, different kinds of alterations of vowels and consonants that we are going to figure out as we learn later on, hopefully. And the other kind of change, very common, because we don't always have alterations, but we pretty much always have the change of the ending. So now let's begin the fun and let's figure out how the changes in the endings work for dative case. In my previous video, I began with feminine nouns, so now to make sure that nobody else is upset, we will begin with masculines. Okay, so the first case, if a masculine singular noun ends in a hard consonant, it might take one of those parallel endings. u or ovi. What does parallel ending mean? Parallel endings mean that you can use equally both of them, whichever one you like and whichever one you feel more comfortable using. For example, Stepan, but in dative case, to whom, you can use both Stepanovi or Stepanu. Let's say mechanic, mechanic, mechanikovi or mechaniku. Engineer, inžener, inženerovi, inženeru. Student, student, studentovi or studentu. Case number 2. If a masculine singular noun ends in soft sign, it takes ending u or evi. Again, they are parallel endings, whichever one you like. Вчитель, male teacher, вчитель, вчителю or вчителеві. A name, Василь, Василю or Василеві. Case number 3. If a masculine singular noun ends in ž, ch, sh or sh, it takes the ending u or evi. U or evi. It's the name of the bird. Siskin, I guess. Чиж, чижеві or чижу. The kind of fish. Bream, I guess. Лящ, лящеві or лящу. Case number 4. If the masculine singular noun ends in y, it takes the ending u or yevi. So, the name Serhiy, in dative case, Serhiyu or Serhiyevi. Museum, muzej, in dative case, muzeju or muzejevi. Muzeju, muzejevi. So if you are a student that is totally not familiar with cases, you can just choose one ending, either shorter one or the longer one, whichever one you feel more comfortable, and go with that. But if you are more advanced kind of student and want to improve yourself and your speech, this tip might be useful for you. If you have 2 or more singular masculine nouns that are following each other in the speech, it's better that they take different endings. Let's take student Vasil, for example. So in dative case, you can say either studentovi, long ending, Vasiliu, short ending, or studentu, short ending, Vasilevi, long ending. Another example, inžener Stepan. You can say inženeru Stepanovi or inženerovi Stepanu. Doesn't matter, but again, if you have a name that is followed by surname, it's better that the surname takes the short ending and the name takes the long one. I guess it makes sense because, like, naturally, it's not always the case, but mostly the surname in Ukrainian is much longer than the name, so you don't need to make it even more longer with the long ending. But again, it will not be a big mistake if you just go with one ending. If we have Serhiy Shevchenko, so we will say Serhiyevi Shevchenku. The surname will usually take the shorter one. Or Stepan Klimenko, Stepanovi Klimenku. Okay, now let's learn how feminine singular words behave in dative case. The first case, if a feminine singular noun ends in a, very traditional ending for Ukrainian language, it drops the ending a and it takes the ending i. For example, a letter, bukva, bukvi, school, школа, школі, Світлана, Світлані. Second case, if feminine singular noun ends in ya, also very common ending in Ukrainian, it will drop the ya and again take the ending i. For example, female pupil, учениця, учениці, strawberry, полуниця, полуниці. Capital, столиця, столиці. Third case, in Ukrainian we have a huge amount of feminine singular words that end in iya. So if that is the case, the noun drops the ya and takes ї, the E with two dots. For example, geography, географія, dative case, географії. History, історія, історії. Italy, Італія, Італії. Марія, Марії. And now let's talk about alterations a little bit, because this is important. So if we remove the ending from the feminine noun, remove the ending R or ya, and the rest of the word without ending ends in h, k, h. This rest of the word we call stem, right? So if the stem of the feminine singular noun ends in h, k, h, there will be an alteration. So h in the stem changes to z, k in the stem changes to ts, and h to s. Let's see how it works. And then, of course, don't forget to change the ending. If there is a, it will change to e. And luckily, my own personal name is in that category. So, Olha, but dative case to give something to Olha. Ользі. A book. Книга. Книзі. A hand. Рука. Руці. River. Ріка. Ріці. A flea. Блоха. Блосі. A fly. Муха. Мусі. So we were talking about singulars. Now you will ask me, and what about plurals? And I will answer you. For plurals, masculine or feminine, it will be the same case. If a plural word ends in e, it will drop the ending e and take ending am. For example, mechanics, механіки, механікам. Tables, столи, столам. These are masculine words, but feminine, школи, schools, школам. Female students, студентки, студенткам. Male students, студенти, студентам. But if a plural, masculine or feminine, ends in e, then it will drop the ending e and take ending yam. So masculines, вчителі, teachers, вчителям. Museums, музеї, музеям. Now let's go for feminine. Столиці, столицям. Полуниці, полуницям. Now let's see how dative case works for neuter nouns. The first case, if a neuter singular noun ends in o, it will drop the ending or and take the ending u. For example, village, село, селу, town or city, місто, місту, apple, яблуко, яблуку. Case number 2. If a neuter singular noun ends in e, it will drop the ending e and take the ending u. For example, sun, сонце, сонцю. Place, місце, містю. And the third case is also for a very common situation. We have a lot of neuter singular nouns that end in double consonant that is followed by ending ya. So if that is the case, the noun drops ending ya and takes ending you. Let's see how it works. For example, the word life, життя, double t, followed by ya. Життя, remove ya, add you. Життю. Knowledge, знання, знанню. Comparison, порівняння, порівнянню. And now for neuter plurals. If a neuter plural noun ends in a, it will drop a and take the ending am. For example, села, villages, селам, towns or cities, міста, містам. And the second case, if the plural neuter noun ends in ya, it drops the ending ya and it takes the ending yam. So if there was a, it drops a, takes am. If it's ya, it drops ya, takes yam. For example, places, місця, місцям, lives, життя, життям, tasks or assignments, завдання, завданням. So this was all that I wanted to tell you today about dative case. Don't forget to think about more verbs in English or in Ukrainian, even better, that can take both direct and indirect objects, and write it down for me in the comment section down below if you cannot think of any. Not a big deal. Before we start learning, I wanted to quickly remind you that if you want, and if you haven't yet, then you can follow my page on Facebook. It is called Let's Learn Ukrainian, or any of my accounts on Instagram or TikTok, also at Let's Learn Ukrainian. Also, if you enjoy my content and would like to support my channel on Patreon, you can do that. I will leave all the links down below so that you can easily find them. Also on my Patreon, you can download the notes to every video that I'm posting. So if you are interested in that, check it out. And now we can finally start learning. So dative case. Dative case in Ukrainian is Давальний відмінок. Давальний відмінок. So in itself, the name is carrying a clue for us. So Давальний comes from Ukrainian verb давати. Давати. And давати means to give. And we can consider it a clue for the questions that dative case responds to. And those are кому, чому. Кому, чому. Кому means to whom, okay? So to give to whom. Давати кому, okay? Dative case. Кому means to whom. And чому, the second question, is to what, okay? To give to what. Давати чому. So now let us figure out when and where in Ukrainian we use dative case. First of all, some of Ukrainian verbs. Yes, in Ukrainian we have verbs that require that their indirect object goes in dative case. Those again are our verbs of giving something to someone, right? Давальний відмінок, давати, to give, and the verbs of giving. Here is another clue. So what kind of verbs we have here? Давати, to give, obviously, давати. Дарувати, to gift somebody with something. Дарувати, to help, also sort of to give a hand to somebody with something. Допомагати, допомагати, to help. Позичати, позичати, to lend. Приносити, приносити, to bring or to fetch. Пропонувати, пропонувати, to suggest. Купити, купити, to buy. Передавати, to pass something to somebody. For instance, вона дала дівчатам води. Вона дала дівчатам води. She gave some water to girls. Okay? Вона дала води кому? She gave water to whom? To girls. Дівчатам. The noun дівчата becomes дівчатам because it requires dative case. Вони запропонували друзям подивитися фільм. Вони запропонували друзям подивитися фільм. They suggested to their friends to watch a movie. Вони запропонували кому? Запропонували друзям. Друзям in dative case, because here it is our indirect object. To suggest to whom, right? To suggest what is direct object, but to suggest to whom is our indirect object, dative case. Запропонували друзям. Мама допомогла дітям з домашнім завданням. Мама допомогла дітям з домашнім завданням. Mother helped children with their homework. Okay? Допомогла кому? She helped whom? She helped to whom? To her children with the homework. Допомогла кому? Допомогла дітям. Дітям in dative case because indirect object. Я позичу сусідці трохи цукру. Я позичу сусідці трохи цукру. I will lend some sugar to my neighbor. Я позичу сусідці трохи цукру. Позичу кому? I will lend this sugar to whom? To my neighbor. Сусідці. Dative case. Він подарував дівчатам квіти. Він подарував дівчатам квіти. He gifted flowers to girls. Він подарував кому? Подарував дівчатам. Окей? He gifted to whom? To girls. Дівчатам in dative case. Again, don't mix up direct and indirect object. He gave what? Flowers, direct object, but he gave flowers to whom? Indirect object, dative case. Дівчатам. To the girls. Also, not all of these verbs will necessarily have to do with giving. We have in Ukrainian a lot of other verbs that require that their indirect object is in dative case. For instance, пояснювати, to explain, also in a way to give an explanation to somebody. Пояснювати, переказувати, to tell, переказувати, to tell. Телефонувати, or a more colloquial way to say that is дзвонити, телефонувати, дзвонити, to call. Відкриватися, to open up, to tell about your feelings, to show your emotions. Відкриватися, to tell a secret maybe. To open up. Освідчуватися, освідчуватися. Освідчуватися can have two meanings. It means to tell somebody about your love, to confess that you have feelings to them, or to ask them to marry you. Освідчуватися. Дозволяти, to allow, дозволяти. Наказувати, to order, наказувати. Обіцяти, to promise, обіцяти. Радити, to advise, радити. Бажати, to wish, бажати. For instance, учитель пояснив студентам цю тему. Учитель пояснив студентам цю тему. The teacher explained to the students this topic. In English, we would say the teacher explained this topic to the students. Okay? So, the teacher, вчитель, пояснив кому. The teacher explained to whom? To students. Студентам in dative case. Степан освідчився Оксані. Let's be more specific. Вчора Степан освідчився Оксані. Yesterday Степан proposed to Оксана. Освідчився кому? Оксані. Proposed to whom? To Оксана. Оксана in dative case because indirect object. Оксана пообіцяла Степану дати відповідь через кілька днів. Оксана пообіцяла Степану дати відповідь через кілька днів. Оксана promised to Степан to give an answer, to give her answer in a couple of days. Okay? So, Оксана promised to whom? Оксана пообіцяла кому? Степану. Степану in dative case because it is our indirect object for the verb пообіцяти, to promise. Дозволь дітям погратися ще трошки. Дозволь дітям погратися ще трошки. Allow children to play a little bit more, a little longer, okay? Дозволь кому? Allow to whom? Дітям, to children. Дітям in dative case because indirect object, nothing new. Also in Ukrainian, we use dative case in phrases that contain impersonal verbs. So, what is an impersonal verb? What kind of verb we can consider impersonal? Also, we sort of can get a clue from the name, impersonal verb. So, what sort of verb can be impersonal? So, an impersonal verb describes an action or a state of something, a condition of something that is happening by itself, and our object, the person, doesn't matter. The action is either happening by itself or we don't really care about the person or something that is performing this action. The sort of impersonal verbs that we are interested in, the ones that will require dative case, will very often end in ся. For instance, an impersonal verb спиться comes from the verb to sleep, спати, спиться. Працюється comes from the verb to work, працювати. Працювати is an infinitive and працюється is impersonal form. Живеться comes from the verb жити, to live. Хочеться comes from the verb хотіти, to want. Okay? For instance, very often we would use an impersonal verb in Ukrainian to say that we can't really get to do something. It doesn't work for us. For instance, моєму брату не спиться. My brother can't get himself to sleep. My brother can't sleep. Okay? Моєму брату, dative case, не спиться. He can't sleep. Another instance. Уже пізно і дітям не хочеться робити домашнє завдання. It is too late, it is very late, and the children can't get themselves to make a homework. Okay? Кому дітям не хочеться? The children don't really want, can't get themselves to do something. Чому Оксані не живеться у новій квартирі? Чому Оксані не живеться у новій квартирі? Why doesn't Oksana feel like living in the new apartment? Кому Оксані не живеться? Не живеться, she can't live, she can't get herself to live, she doesn't feel good about living, she doesn't feel like living, okay? Yeah, I feel like actually this English structure, I or somebody else don't feel like doing something, or somebody doesn't feel like doing something, is translating this phrase from Ukrainian very accurately. Like, мені не спиться, I don't feel like sleeping. Мені не їсться, I don't feel like eating. Мені не хочеться, I don't really want. Because we can't say I don't feel like wanting, right? So I don't really want. Also, we use dative case with phrases like мені здається. Мені здається. Also, I feel like, or it seems to me that something is happening. Мені здається. Or Оксані здається. Оксана feels like, Оксана, it seems to Оксана that. For instance, твоєму колезі не здається, що час уже завершувати презентацію. Твоєму колезі не здається, що час уже завершувати презентацію. Doesn't your colleague feel like ending the presentation already? Doesn't he feel like it's time to end the presentation right now? By now. Yeah, that sort of phrases that have impersonal verbs, and we have other impersonal phrases that doesn't necessarily have the verbs. Also phrases that express conditions. For instance, Oksana is cold. Oksana feels cold. Оксані холодно. The children feel cold. Дітям холодно. Okay? When we have the condition of somebody feeling hot, the temperature is too high, so they would say Степану спекотно. Спекотно means hot. So Stepan is hot. Stepan feels hot. Степану спекотно. Also байдуже means don't care, okay? So Степанові байдуже. Stepan doesn't care. Оксані байдуже. Oksana doesn't care. Дітям байдуже. The children don't care. The condition of being pleased. Приємно. Okay? Приємно. For instance, я думаю, твоєму батькові буде приємно отримати такий подарунок. Я думаю, твоєму батькові буде приємно отримати такий подарунок. I think your father would be very pleased to receive a gift like that. Батькові приємно. Батькові in dative case, приємно is a state. Another condition, another state is when somebody is hurting. Somebody is in pain, okay? Боляче, боляче. So, for instance, to say that somebody is in pain, that Oksana is in pain, we would say Оксані боляче. For instance, it hurts Oksana to hear something like that. Оксані боляче таке чути. Also, pay attention. I recommend that you pay attention to the shift that is happening here, because the one who is performing the action in English, somebody who we consider a subject of an action, in Ukrainian here in these phrases becomes an indirect object, okay? The action is sort of being performed on them. For instance, in English we would say my friend is hurting, my friend is hurting, my friend is feeling pain, okay, who, my friend, is a subject here, okay? But in Ukrainian, моїй подрузі боляче. Моїй подрузі, кому dative case боляче. And here, моїй подрузі is nothing but an indirect object, not a subject. Another instance, my sister can't sleep. My sister doesn't feel like sleeping, okay? Who, my sister, is a subject, okay? But in Ukrainian, моїй сестрі не спиться. Кому моїй сестрі? Моїй сестрі here is nothing else but an indirect object for this impersonal verb не спиться. And not a subject, okay? Another instance, the children are cold. Who? The children, okay? Subject in English, but in Ukrainian, дітям холодно. Дітям холодно. Кому? Дітям. Дітям here is an indirect object in dative case and not a subject. Another instance when I recommend you using dative case in Ukrainian is when you are talking about permission, necessity, or possibility. For instance, пацієнтам потрібно підписати договір. Пацієнтам потрібно підписати договір. Again, this потрібно is very impersonal thing to say, but if we have to translate the sentence, we would say the patients need or must sign the contract. Another instance, учням не дозволено пропускати школу. Учням не дозволено пропускати школу. The students are not allowed to skip school, okay? Учням, кому учням in dative case? Не дозволено, are not allowed, okay? Here again the same situation. Дозволено is impersonal verb that says they are not allowed, but again, students here aren't a subject but an indirect object, something that we were talking in a previous unit about. We use dative case in Ukrainian also when we talk about age. For instance, моїй бабусі 80 років. Моїй бабусі 80 років. My grandmother is 80 years old. Кому? Моїй бабусі 80 років. Another instance, цій будівлі більше 100 років. Цій будівлі більше 100 років. This building is more than 100 years old. Чому цій будівлі in dative case? And another rule that we are going to take a look at in this video is telling us that we need to use dative case in Ukrainian with certain prepositions. They aren't really interesting, there aren't many of them, that aren't very common, but still I will name them, okay? Завдяки, 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 thanks to, назустріч, towards, назустріч, назустріч. Всупереч, contrary to, всупереч, всупереч. На противагу, на противагу. In contrast, as opposed to. For instance, завдяки твоїм зусиллям ми це зробили. Завдяки твоїм зусиллям ми це зробили. Thanks to your effort, we have done it. We made it happen. Завдяки чому? Завдяки твоїм зусиллям. Thanks to what? Thanks to your effort. Твоїм зусиллям in dative case. Also, we had this period of Ukrainian history, Orange Revolution, if you remember, if you heard about it. So the president who was elected after that has this program called 10 кроків назустріч людям, if I'm not mistaken. 10 кроків назустріч людям. 10 steps towards people, okay? Назустріч кому? Назустріч людям. Людям in dative case. Hi everyone, it's me Oля here. You are welcome to my channel. In this video we are going to talk about dative case in Ukrainian, or namely we are going to practice dative case in Ukrainian. We are going to put as many nouns into dative case as we can today. So dative case in Ukrainian is Давальний, відмінок. Давальний відмінок comes from the verb давати, to give. However, in this video, I'm not going to dive deeply in grammar because I have already done that in one of my previous videos. So before doing the practical part, before watching this video, I strongly recommend that you revise your knowledge about the grammar that stands behind dative case. And also you can watch a video about usage of dative case. I also have this video, and I will leave the link to both of those videos down below, as well as somewhere here, just in case. And if you know everything, if you are feeling confident with the grammar of dative case, nothing stops you from practicing. But before we start learning, I would like to quickly take a moment and say thank you so much and appreciate my patrons, everybody who is supporting my channel. You can see the names of some of these wonderful people on your screens. If you enjoy my content and would like to become my patron as well, you can do that. I will leave the link to my Patreon as well as the links to all of my other social media down below in the description box. So yeah, and from my Patreon you can download this particular presentation and all the other materials that I have been using in my videos for a while now. And now we can finally start learning. So what are we going to do now? So I'm giving you two words. They aren't a word combination yet, they aren't making any sense. You are trying to put the noun in dative case. I will give you a moment to do that. I will count to 1, 2, 3, and if you feel like that's not enough time, that is okay, and you can just press the pause button and take your time, write it down, think about it, and then come back to the video and I will give you the correct answer. So if you have seen my video on the usage of dative case, you know that in Ukrainian we have certain verbs, not all of them, but certain verbs that require that their indirect object has to be in dative case. Okay, one of these verbs is the verb I have mentioned already in my video, давати. Давати means to give, right? So we say давати кому, to give to whom. That's the question of dative case. Or давати чому, to give to what. That's also the second question of two questions of dative case. So we have давати and діти. Давати, we figured, means to give, and діти means children, a plural noun. So to say to give to children, we will say 1, 2, 3. Давати дітям. Діти in nominative became дітям in dative. If you have answered дітям, you were correct. Давати кому? Давати дітям. To give to children. Okay? So діти in nominative just means children. But дітям in dative already means to children. Okay? So now this word combination finally makes sense. Now we see how two words are relating to one another in this combination. And that is why we have cases in Ukrainian. To show how different words in a sentence or in a phrase are connected, are relating to each other. Okay, now I will stop explaining. Now we are going to do that much quicker. Next verb that is requiring that their indirect object has to be in dative case is подарувати. Подарувати. Подарувати means to give a gift, to present somebody with something, with a gift. Okay, so подарувати, and Світлана is a feminine name, very common in Ukraine. So, подарувати Світлана, to say to present to Світлана, we will say подарувати Світлані. Okay, Світлана in nominative became Світлані in dative. Again, if you aren't sure about how Світлана became Світлані, watch my video on the grammar, on the endings. About the rules you have to apply to noun in nominative case to make it dative. Next. Розповісти вчитель. Розповісти means to tell, and вчитель means teacher. Okay, so розповісти вчитель. In order to say to tell to teacher, we will say in Ukrainian Розповісти вчителю. Вчитель in nominative became вчителю in dative. Next. Показати and мати. Показати means to show and мати means mother. So to show to mother will be показати матері. Показати матері. Again, the noun мати is sort of an exception, and I have a video on how you should take through cases a noun like мати and other Ukrainian nouns of feminine gender that end in a consonant. I'll also leave the link somewhere here if you don't know. Next. Пояснити студенти. Пояснити means to explain. Студенти means students. So to explain to students will mean пояснити студентам. Okay? Студенти in nominative became студентам in dative. Кому? Студентам. Next. Принести люди. Принести means to bring. And люди means people. So to bring to people, we will say принести людям. Люди in nominative became людям in dative. Дзвонити друг. Дзвонити means to call on the phone, and друг means friend. So to call a friend or to call to a friend, I know it's not how we say it in English, but just to emphasize, that that's not nominative, that's dative. We will say 1, 2. Дзвонити другові or дзвонити другу. The thing is that masculine nouns in dative case can have two parallel endings. Ові or у. So you can say другові, you can say другу, and that doesn't really matter which one you choose. They are parallel, which means you can pick whichever one you want, whichever one you prefer. Okay? Дзвонити другові, дзвонити другу. Next. Переказати and наша бабуся. Переказати means to tell or retell. To retell something that you were told already to somebody else, okay? Also, переказати means to send money to somebody. Переказати гроші, but, okay, that's not what we are talking about now. What we are interested in is наша бабуся. Наша бабуся means our grandmother. So we are dealing here not only with the noun бабуся, but with the pronoun, with a possessive pronoun наша. So here pay attention. If you have a noun that you need to put in dative case, and this noun is described by a possessive pronoun or an adjective, this personal pronoun or this adjective should be put in dative case as well. So make sure there is an agreement, that they both or three of them, there can be more, that doesn't necessarily have to be only two words. They all have to be in dative case. So we put наша in dative and бабуся. And yeah, will you be surprised if I tell you that I have a video on declension of possessive pronouns in Ukrainian as well? I will link it somewhere here so that you don't have to go and search. So take your time to say to tell to our grandmother. We will say переказати нашій бабусі. Переказати нашій бабусі. You can see that наша бабуся in nominative became нашій бабусі in dative. Next. Освідчитися plus своя дівчина. Освідчитися means to either confess love or propose marriage, right? To make a proposal. And своя дівчина means own girlfriend. So to propose to somebody's own girlfriend, we will say освідчитися своїй дівчині. Освідчитися своїй дівчині. You see, we had своя дівчина in nominative. It became своїй дівчині in dative. Next. Позичати and твої сусіди. Позичати means to lend something to somebody. In this case, your neighbors. To lend something to your neighbors. Твої сусіди means your neighbors. So, we need to put in dative case here 2 words. Твої and сусіди. And that will be позичати твоїм сусідам. Твої сусіди in nominative became твоїм сусідам in dative. Next. Наказувати їхні працівники. Наказувати means to order, to give an order, like to tell somebody to do something. And їхні працівники means their employees. Okay? Працівники means employees. So again, їхні працівники. Both words need to be put in dative case. Let's do that. 1, 2, 3. Наказувати їхнім працівникам. Наказувати їхнім працівникам. To order to their employees. Next. Радити. Найкраща подруга. Радити means to advise, to give advice. Найкраща подруга means best friend. So, to give advice to a best friend, or to advise to a best friend. Here we have a noun and an adjective. Just like I told you, both should be in dative case. Радити найкращій подрузі. Радити найкращій подрузі. Here pay attention that we have an alteration of 2 consonants, г and з. Подруга became подрузі. Г changed to з, and this type of alteration is very common in Ukrainian. Also, if you have seen my video on usage of dative case, you know that we must apply dative case to a noun if it is an object, an indirect object of an impersonal verb, so-called безособові дієслова. I will not go in details here. You should watch, if you are unsure what I'm talking about, my videos on usage of dative case. I will just tell you that these are the verbs like спиться, хочеться, бігається, читається, etc. Okay? Працюється. For instance, Степан and не спиться. It will mean something like Stepan cannot sleep. Stepan doesn't feel like sleeping. Okay? But only if we put Stepan in dative case, this word combination will make sense. So I'm giving you a moment to do that. And we will have Степану не спиться, or Степанові не спиться. Again, both are parallel versions. You can use whichever one you want. Степану не спиться. Stepan cannot sleep. Stepan doesn't feel like sleeping. Next. Професорка не працюється. Професорка means a female professor. Не працюється, again, can't work, doesn't feel like working. So to say that the female professor doesn't feel like working for some reason, we will say 1, 2, 3. Професорці не працюється. Професорці не працюється. Notice here that професорка in nominative case became професорці in dative case. Here again we have an alteration of k and ц. Also a very commonly happening alteration of consonants in Ukrainian. Професорці не працюється. Next. Ольга здається. Ольга is a feminine name, very common in Ukrainian, which happens also to be my name. What a coincidence. And здається means it seems, right? So to say it seems to Olha that something is happening or whatever, it seems to Olha. In order for that word combination to make sense, we must put Olha in dative case. Let's do that. Ользі здається. Ользі здається, again, you see the alteration of G and Z in the stem of the noun. Pay attention to that. Next is друзі не віриться. Друзі means friends, plural noun, and не віриться means can't believe, okay? So in order to say friends can't believe, we need to put друзі in dative case. Let's do that. 1, 2, 3. We will have друзям не віриться. Друзям не віриться. Friends can't believe. Friends don't feel like believing what they are hearing, okay? Next one is діти and не хочеться. Діти means children and не хочеться means don't want to. So to say children don't really want to, can't get themselves to want something, we must put діти in dative case, and when we do that, we will have 2, 3. Дітям не хочеться. Дітям не хочеться. Children don't really feel like doing something. The children don't want to do this. The children don't really want. Вікторія and не читається. Victoria is a feminine name, and не читається means doesn't feel like reading. Right? So to say Victoria does not feel like reading, in Ukrainian we will say Вікторії не читається. Victoria in nominative case became Вікторії in dative. Next, we also use a noun in dative case with adverbs that describe states and conditions, such as somebody is cold or hot or doesn't care or pleased, etc. Yes, pay attention that these states need to be described with an adverb. For instance, школярі and холодно. Школярі means school children, and холодно is an adverb that means cold. So to say school children are cold, we will say школярам холодно. Школярі nominative, but кому? To whom? Школярам. Школярам холодно. Next. Дівчата and жарко. Дівчата means girls and жарко means hot. Again, that's an adverb that is describing the condition. It means that the temperature is really hot and they are feeling it, okay? That's not to say that somebody is hot as a compliment, okay? So, to say that the girls are feeling hot, we will say Дівчатам жарко. Дівчатам жарко. The girls are hot. The girls are feeling hot. Don't use that, in a situation when you want to be flirty, okay? Because that isn't going to work. Дівчатам жарко. Next. Тварини and комфортно. Тварини means animals and комфортно means comfortable. You can also say зручно. It will also mean comfortable. So to say the animals are feeling comfortable, the animals are comfortable, we will say тваринам комфортно. Тварини in nominative became тваринам in dative. Next. Галина Юріївна and сумно. In Ukrainian and some other countries, we have this habit of calling people not only by their first name, but also by their father's name, a so-called patronymic. Okay, so Юріївна in this case is a patronymic. So both the name and the father's name should be put in dative case. Let's do that. Take your time. We will have Галині Юріївні сумно. Галина Юріївна in nominative became Галині Юріївні in dative. Of course, obviously, both of these words should start with a capital letter, which I didn't consider, obviously, when I was preparing this presentation. Next, this time we are dealing with a masculine first name and a patronymic. Олександр Валерійович. And зручно. Зручно means comfortable, right? So to say that Олександр Валерійович is comfortable, we will say Олександру Валерійовичу зручно. Олександру Валерійовичу зручно. Both of these nouns we put in dative case, the way it's supposed to be. Next one is Іван Сергійович and байдуже. Іван Сергійович, again, a masculine name, and байдуже means is careless, doesn't care, is in a condition of not given much thought to something. Okay? Іван Сергійович байдуже. We will say Івану Сергійовичу байдуже. Or we can say Іванові Сергійовичу байдуже. Okay, remember that for masculine nouns we have two options here. We can say Івану or Іванові. Okay? Next. Наші діти весело. Наші діти means our children, and весело means cheerful. So we would just say our kids are having fun. Okay, are having good time. Весело. So again, наші діти, two words, both of them will be put in dative case. Let's do that. 1, 2, 3. We will have нашим дітям весело. Нашим дітям весело. Next. Ваша сестра and боляче. Ваша сестра means your sister, your plural sister, and боляче means is hurting. So to say that your sister is hurting or your sister is in pain, is feeling pain, we will say вашій сестрі боляче. Вашій сестрі боляче. Ваша сестра in nominative became вашій сестрі in dative. Next. Джон Сміт. And цікаво. John Smith is a masculine name of foreign origin for Ukrainians. John Smith. And цікаво means feels interest, is interested, right? So to say that John Smith is interested, in Ukrainian we will say 1, 2, 3. Джонові Сміту цікаво, or you can say Джону Сміту цікаво. Okay? John Smith is interested. Next. Ребека нудно. Rebecca, nudno. Rebecca is a feminine name which is foreign for Ukrainians. And nudno means bored. So to say Rebecca is bored, we will say Rebecca is in a condition of boredom, is experiencing boredom. 1, 2, 3. We will have Ребеці нудно. Ребеці нудно. You see that the double k we had in the end of the stem of the word became double ц. Because the alteration happened here. Ребеці нудно. Next. Колега приємно. Колега means colleague and приємно means pleased, is pleased. So to say that the colleague is pleased, we will say remember about the alteration, because there is a h in the end of the stem. It will change to z, and we will have колезі приємно. Колега will become колезі in dative, and that's how we say that the colleague is pleased. Колезі приємно. Next. Also, in Ukrainian, we have some permission or necessity words, such as заборонено, forbidden, or можна, may, or дозволено, allowed, or не дозволено, not allowed, things like that. And the object of these words is going to be in dative case as well. So we have громадяни and заборонено. Громадяни means citizens in plural, and заборонено means forbidden. So to say that the citizens are forbidden, or it is forbidden to citizens, we need to put citizens, громадяни, in dative case. Let's do that. And we will have громадянам заборонено. Кому? Громадянам заборонено. Кому? Громадянам. Громадяни in nominative became громадянам in dative. Next. Студенти and дозволено. Студенти, дозволено. Студенти means students, obviously, and дозволено means allowed. Okay? Have the permission. So to say that the students are allowed, we will say студентам дозволено. Студенти became студентам. Next. Людина можна. Людина means a human being or a person, and можна means may or is allowed, okay, has the permission to do that, can do it. So in order to say that a person may do something, we will say людині можна. Людині можна, a person can, or a person may do something. Людині можна. Людина in nominative became людині in dative. Next. Оксана Степанівна and потрібно. Оксана Степанівна, again, a feminine name with a patronymic attached. And потрібно means, that's the way to say that somebody needs something in Ukrainian, right? So to say that Oksana Stepanivna needs something, we will say Оксані Степанівні потрібно. Оксана Степанівна in nominative became Оксані Степанівні in dative. And that means that Oksana Stepanivna needs whatever it is that she needs. Blank. Next. Наші працівники необхідно. Наші працівники means our employees, and необхідно means it is necessary for the employees, right? So to say it is necessary for our employees, we will say нашим працівникам необхідно. Нашим працівникам необхідно. So our employees really need, or it is necessary for our employees, blank, 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 whatever it is. Next. Твої друзі дозволено. Твої друзі means your friends, and дозволено means are allowed. Okay, so to say that your friends are allowed, we will say твоїм друзям дозволено. Твоїм друзям дозволено. Твої друзі in nominative became твоїм друзям in dative. Next. Ваші сусіди не дозволено. Ваші сусіди means your plural neighbors, and не дозволено means not allowed. Okay, so to say that your neighbors, your plural neighbors, are not allowed in Ukrainian, we will say 1, 2, 3. Вашим сусідам не дозволено. Вашим сусідам не дозволено. Your plural neighbors are not allowed. Next. When we talk about age, To say that some person is that many years old, we put that person whose age we are discussing or that thing which age we are talking about in dative case. So, for instance, мій дід means my grandfather, and 76 років means 76 years. So to say that my grandfather is 76 years old in Ukrainian, in order to do that, we must put мій дід in dative case. Let's do that. Remember that we should put in dative case both мій, the possessive pronoun, and дід, a noun. We will have моєму дідові 76 років. Моєму дідові, мій дід became моєму дідові. And now this sentence makes sense. Makes perfect sense. And the first one didn't. With nominative case, it just doesn't sound right. Next. Твоя донька 17. Твоя донька means your daughter, and 17 means 17. So you don't have to say 17 років necessary. You can just say 17 and it will be understood that you are talking about the years. Okay? So your daughter is 17. To say that in Ukrainian, we will say твоїй доньці 17. Твоїй доньці, so твоя донька became твоїй доньці. Okay? Next. Їхня вчителька 32. Їхня вчителька means their teacher, and 32 means 32. So to say that their teacher is 32, we will say їхній вчительці 32. Their teacher is 32. Їхній вчительці. In dative case. Next. Моя собака 3 роки. Моя собака, my dog, and 3 роки, 3 years. To say that in Ukrainian, we will say моїй собаці 3 роки. Моїй собаці 3 роки. My dog is 3 years old. Next. Наші кошенята 4 місяці. Наші кошенята, our kittens, 4 місяці, 4 months. So to say that our kittens are 4 months old, we will say in Ukrainian нашим кошенятам 4 місяці. Нашим кошенятам 4 місяці. Our kittens are 4 months old. Наші кошенята became нашим кошенятам in dative case. Next. Цей будинок and 130 років. Цей будинок means this house, and 130 років means 130 years. Okay? So to say that this house is 130 years old, we will say цьому будинку 130 років. Цей будинок became цьому будинку in dative case. Next. With certain prepositions. Yes, we have a couple of prepositions in Ukrainian that require dative case. These aren't very common, but I thought you should know about them as well. So one of them is завдяки. Завдяки means thanks to. So thanks to what? Завдяки чому? Again, you see the question, you spotted the question of dative case. Завдяки чому? Or завдяки кому? So let's work with our words. Завдяки and наша робота. So завдяки, we figured, means thanks to, and наша робота means our work. So to say thanks to our work, blank blank, something happened. Thanks to our work. Let's do that. Did you put наша робота in dative case? Are you sure in your result? Let's check it out. If you said завдяки нашій роботі, you were correct. Наша робота in dative is нашій роботі. Next. Назустріч, another preposition. Назустріч means towards, okay? So, for instance, назустріч and Галина. To say towards Галина, we will say what? Назустріч Галині. Галина in nominative became Галині in dative. Назустріч Галині, towards Галина. Our next preposition is всупереч. Всупереч means against or contrary to, okay? So, for instance, всупереч and закон. Закон means law. So, against the law, in contrary to the law. In order to say that, we will say one. Всупереч закону. Всупереч закону. Закон in nominative became закону in dative. Next. And next one is на противагу, means in contrast to something, right? So we have на противагу and твої слова. Твої слова means your words, okay? Plural. So we must put твої слова in dative case for the word combination to make sense. Let's do that. 1, 2, 3. На противагу твоїм словам. In contrast to your words. На противагу твоїм словам. And yeah, that was the last example of using dative case in Ukrainian that I wanted to share with you. Do let me know whether you enjoy this video. Do you like this format? Do I make more of those, or do I stop doing them and start doing something else? Do let me know. I appreciate all of your feedback. Again, if you liked the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you didn't. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that we can learn Ukrainian together, and I will see you in my next video, hopefully very soon. Bye!